As it is with many cities, people in Boston can tell you there's too much violence, but the numbers for the past few years are a far cry from the level of violence in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The difference can be explained in many ways, but these usually include the actions of community and law enforcement. Our guest was part of that story as founder of the youth outreach organization Gang Peace, and you can read all about it in his new book, Gang Peace to Street Peace, The Untold Story. We'd like to welcome Rodney Dailey. Thank you very much for being with us, Rodney.
Thank you so much for having me.
I remember those days, and I remember part of the story, but how you were doing some good things. But take me before that. Why did you become the part of this story yourself?
Well, I think that's important to understand that it's like my calling. It's part of one of the reasons I wrote the book, because it's you know, I could have gone on and just taken care of my family and try to make sure that they were safe. But part of my calling is to help someone get to a better place in their life, and I think that it continued on as my calling to get the book written, because either I was going to die with the information that I learned in my head, or there was no or I was going to write the book, right? And a number of grassroots organizations or companies or what have you that do work, they have these researchers that come out and gather information and go back and put it in paperwork so people can get to it. And we didn't really have that. So there was no recorder or someone. The best recorder we had were the proposals that we wrote for foundations to say that this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. And I think it's something to be said for the forerunners, people and organizations that ran before. Because the wisdom gained by what they learned is needed in creating whatever new thing that we're creating now. But I think what happens sometimes is when the new thing comes, they come to replace the old thing versus to, and that's unfortunate. I mean, it happens in so many venues, and it certainly happens in nonprofits. So here we are, we're the super program now. But the super program needs to gain knowledge from the existing program so they don't make the same mistakes. And so I just know that that's necessary, and so that's what prompted me to write the book. My mother was and my father, who have passed away, they won't get a chance to read this book, but they got a chance to see me doing the right thing. They were people who, we were not rich folks, but we always helped somebody else. We always tried to help somebody, and whether it was with an old coat or with you know, somebody that was hungry. Even my brothers and sisters, my brother, he you know, would feed the stray dogs, you know, sort of like a friend of mine's son who had passed away. Well, Jermaine Gaffigan would always have a line of dogs that he was playing with or feeding or trying to teach them tricks or whatever he was doing with them. So that prompted me to say that, look, you cannot stand on the sideline and watch this craziness happen, especially if you've been given something that could help someone else who doesn't know what you're talking about. And so there's a lot of young people who didn't have the parenting at home, didn't get discipline from having to do chores or what have you. Maybe their parents were a single parent and was working all the time, or maybe their parent was needed help themselves or had gone to jail or whatever. And that's why we had a lot of grandparents raising kids. But it's our duty to give back. We can't take this with us to our grave. We have to help somebody see a better place in their life.
I want to get into the history, because when you got Gang Peace started, there were other youth outreach programs going on. They worked with people at risk or even people who had caused a certain amount of trouble. And what I recall in those days, nobody wanted to admit there were gangs. And you admit there are gangs, and you don't say we're not here to annihilate gangs, we're here to deal with them.
Right. We're here to help them see that life is more than a drug game. If there were sticks that cost money, they'd be selling sticks. But unfortunately, it was drugs or stealing something and turning it into cash. Everybody wanted cash. There were some other programs, Peaceful Movement. There were some other programs doing something. But there were also some programs that looked like they were doing something, but they were camouflage for something else that they were doing. And so it made it bad for every program that was doing the right thing. You know, there was a program on Geneva Ave that was pretty much a youth program, but it was more so a distribution center for, you know, the operations that was going on in the street. And nobody could really, I can't fault people for figuring out how to live in their lives. But if they want to change, then I can help them do that. You know what I mean? So that's what we began to do. But at the time, of course, there were, it was hard for police departments and other people working in the community to figure out who was doing the right thing and who was doing the wrong thing. You'd think it would be clear, but it really wasn't. And so that's why we had to sort of say, look, young person, male or female, we're working with you. You've had enough police officers in your life before we met you. We had to work with the Justice Department. You either were on probation or parole or still going to court. And so we're going to help you as long as you're willing to help yourself. And that's where this big element of trust was needed. And everybody wasn't doing what we were trying to do, so we needed to make it clear that this is who we are. We had come online as Gang Peace. We had a big march from Mattapan down into Malcolm X Park, the Shelbourne Center at the time. Alfreda Harris let us have a big concert out on the back, and from there we recruited volunteers to try to get started. I was the director of a treatment program at the time, and there was a certain newspaper, that a Prosper newspaper, had gone out of business on Blue Hill Avenue. But the rest of the building that the newspaper was in was a crack house. So, but I rented that space from a friend of mine's and went on to just stay there and maintain, even though there was a crack house upstairs running the waters over and trying to get us out. Yeah.
Well, back in these days, you know, the gang epidemic, drug epidemic, it also overlapped with the epidemic of dropouts. So you've got kids who don't have enough education, they have quarry issues, plus it must be hard to leave a gang.
Well, this is the thing. This is one of the reasons why we decided that it wasn't about, most of the time, the gang was made up of people who were friends. You're asking people who are friends to stop being friends to each other. No, we're not asking them to do that. And so that's where Gang Peace came from. We just want you to live longer, and we want you to change your behavior. We could teach you how, you know, if you could sell drugs, you can sell houses, cars, you can sell, and that was one of the reasons why our program had a lot of entrepreneurship in it, where we had open candy stores, we had fitness centers, we had the Vending Card Association for Blue Hill Avenue. We designed a boot and had it made in Korea when the deal fell apart with Timberland. But we did have a meeting with Timberland, and so our whole goal was to show individuals, show young people that you can do anything you want to do besides sell drugs and shoot guns. You can sell anything as long as the demand is for it. You can do it. We built a recording studio to show them that you could sell records, but you also can be managers. You can be the one that packaged the product. You can learn marketing, and so we coupled the studio with Berkeley Performance Center so we could get some professionals over to actually teach these things and get some individuals into those programs. These things are still needed today. This is not like, oh, that's so old. No, these things are needed today. If we had looked around at the time when we put the recording studio, we were one of the first youth programs with a recording studio. And by the way, the reason we put the recording studio in there is because we have what we have right now. We had so many young people out there selling drugs, trying to get enough money to go down to Daddy Junkie Music. Now it's Wurlitzer. Or maybe it's Daddy Junkie Music and it used to be Wurlitzer. Anyway, to get a piece of equipment and make a recording studio in their home, hopefully to make a beat that someone would like to buy, you know, and get a deal. But in the process was going to jail out there trying to make that money. And so we said, we're going to build this studio and we're going to get a young man in there. His name was DJ Cutter to be able to be the engineer in there and bring the producers in. And not all the time was the music that they were making the kind of music that everybody wanted to listen to, but it was art. And it was an opportunity for them not to go to jail while they were packaging their products to be able to try to make it in the industry.
Do you see some of these graduates now?
I see them all the time. I go to, and I don't remember everybody's name, but I remember faces like that. And I go through the mall, I see them, some are managers in stores, some have graduated from college, some are working in high schools. I saw a couple that are police officers now, you know what I mean? It's just in all walks of life. I think what happens is once an individual understands that somebody cares about them enough to help them get their pathway on where they want to go, then it's easy for them to be connected to that resource and keep going. But if no one's paying no attention, if no one's trying to help them get to a better place in their life, if they saw something they wanted to do on television, they knew they had the skill set to do it, but when they turned their TV off and went outside, there was no program to plug into. Boston is so fortunate. It's got so many programs, but still the methodology of how to reach this population is kind of missing in some respects. When you're working with someone and they tell you, say for instance, a gang member told me, he said, well, I want to be a rap artist. Well, I can't lose that. I have to keep that. I have to make sure that when I'm talking to that person, I'm helping them get closer to their goal. But in between that goal, there's a number of other things we got to do. We got to get you back in school. We got to help you find a job. We got to help you understand that you can't carry guns every day. Or you got beefs in the street, someone's trying to kill you, you know what I mean? Or the police are trying to lock you up. Or you got court cases, we need to go clear them up. You know what I mean? So often we would have relationship with individuals just by going to meet with their public defender that they hadn't seen since they got the case, and finding out how that lawyer planned to represent them when they get to court, versus the lawyer stepping out in the court 2 months later saying, John, and doesn't even know what he looked like. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, those relationships were necessary. I mean, we would do things that we just thought were necessary. I mean, and that's why the programs that were developed worked. We didn't do them because the police were walking with us. We didn't do them because someone else was walking. We did them because that was a social issue that continued to come up, getting individuals back in school. What gang are you in? Are you in a local gang or a national gang? National gangs have other attachments to them. Local gangs have attachments too, or you may not be in a gang at all. You might have just been selling drugs, trying to make money. You know what I mean? Carrying a gun. Or you might not have been in any of that. You might have been a good young person, or I'm not saying that those people were bad, but you might have been a good young person who got yourself in a conflict with somebody that have shot 2 or 3 people already, and now you're trying to resolve that, but the only way you see yourself resolving it is with a gun. So there's all types of conflicts going on. And the way we had designed our program, that information was freely flowing in our offices because people trusted us. And that's a big, big issue. You got to have some trust. I think you can't really work with this population without trust. This is the most technological age the world has ever seen, and people can text in seconds, information, things, people's pictures or whatever. And so you got to have trust. They got to believe that you are truly, trying to help them for real, not just doing a job,
How do you convince someone that you're trying to help them for real?
Well, you be there for them, and you're not shaky in your application of programming. You walk with them. You go to court with them. You go to the school with them. You go to the house with them. If they're a younger person that's staying with their parents, maybe you try to get that relationship back going if they want to get it going. And you be honest with them. Honest breeds trust. But if I'm honest with them and then they see me with say they see me with the police that have the ability to lock them up, and they don't understand what that conversation is about, and I haven't built the trust with them, well, then they're gonna move away from me. They're gonna be hard to find. And I think part of what's happening now is that most programs are promoting community police partnerships, and community police partnerships is a beautiful thing. However, it may be before its time. I think we need community police partnership, but who is community police partnerships for? Is it for the young person that needs to get back in school? Is the police going to help them get back in school, or they need medical attention, or whatever they need? Who is the community police partnerships for? I think it's great. I think it should continue on. But in addition to that, we need methodologies that reach an individual without the police. I would teach every young person at our program that you can wake up in the morning, go to work, go to lunch, go meet your boyfriend or girlfriend and go to the movies and go home, and you never had no interaction whatsoever with the police. We do it every day, unless you get a ticket on your car or something.
Now, I know you know the story, but what was it like for you to sit down and actually start writing this?
Oh, I wasn't fortunate to have time to go away Right. So over 9 years, there's been this writing, and sometimes I'd rewrite stuff not knowing I was rewriting it. So anybody I'm sure there's a number of people who have written books that are probably maybe watching the show who weren't fortunate to get away and rewrote stuff. But sometimes I'd look and say, okay, I rewrote that. I need to use that one instead of the other one. But deciding what would be in the book was important. And I needed to use pictures because I had never written a book before. And I needed to be able to have people read and talk back to me and let me know, Rodney, this is redundant, or Rodney, this is, and a lot of what used to come back is, oh, give us something new. So I said, listen, this book is the methodology in science for a reason. It's like a car. You put 4 wheels on a car. Back when? We got old cars, new cars, Bentleys, race cars, but they all have 4 wheels. Maybe some may have 3 wheels if we have a tricycle, but they all have 4 wheels. And this program is like part of the wheel area. The fundamental stuff, trust. If you're working with this population, you got to be working with the prison too, because they're in and out of there. If you're working with this population, you got to be working with the courts too, because they're in and out of there. You got to be working with lawyers. You know what I mean? You got to have a relationship with schools. You don't necessarily have to have a relationship with the police, but the police will come into view at some point, but that wasn't your initial relationship. And I'm not saying that like the police are bad or anything, because we all need the police. But the police's job, just like the prison's job, is specific. And of course we have community police who have a different agenda, but their job is to catch the criminal. And Lord knows there's some criminals out here that need some Rambo police to catch them because they're Rambo criminals. But when we talk about individuals being able to not have interaction with the police because they've had too much already, then we talk about individuals learning how not to be afraid every time a police car rides by that, you know, what did I do? You know what I mean? And that type of thing.
Well, when you're talking about a car, you need a driver's manual. So if people want to get hold of this, what's the best way to look for it?
Well, one of the ways we will be on Kindle and Amazon, so you can e-books, you can get it down. And this Sunday at St. Paul AME in Cambridge, which is 37 Bishop Allen Drive, we'll have the book there, and that'll be our first signing. Our second signing will be at the Charles Hamilton Institute, which the date will be up on my Facebook, at Harvard University. And the third signing will be at UMass Boston. Professor Ogletree, a good friend of mine, and one of our first board members, he wrote the foreword to the book. And another good friend who served on the board for a while was Professor David Hall, who was the dean of the law school at Northeast University for a while. Now he's the president of Virgin Island Universities. And then, of course, Keith Motley, who's the chancellor of UMass, wrote reflections in the book as well. So we think it's a good book if we really speak to the fact that the old can be incorporated into the new, and we need to do that.
Thank you very much for being with us.
All right.
Rodney Dailey, and the book is Gang Peace to Street Peace.